Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalina. Let's talk leadership. Hello and welcome back. We are in episode 4 of this series. You know how much I like series if you've listened to any other episodes of the show. We're talking about type 4 in the Enneagram. If you don't know what the Enneagram is, or you just sort of stumbled upon this episode, I'd highly recommend you check out episodes kind of intro to this one so you can get a sense of, okay, what is the Enneagram? Which type am I? There's a free assessment that I've created to help you figure that out. So highly recommend both listening to the other episodes in this series and taking the assessment. As I said, it's free, and most importantly, will give you insights into your personality, which I think the most, and I've said this in other episodes, but I want to reiterate, it's so important to me. Most assessments will give you here's what your strengths and weaknesses are, right? And I've always found that that's nice. Oftentimes I already know what those are to some degree. I mean, it'll point out maybe some blind spots or give you a couple of ideas, but what really sets the Enneagram apart for me is that you're getting levels of development. So it's not just here's what you're good at, here's what you're not so great at. Now you know, go into the world and try to leverage your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. You know, it's more like, hey, depending on the context of a situation, here's how you're showing up. Here's how your best self, your most evolved, your most developed self would show up. And so if you're falling into those lower level tendencies, it's not strength and weakness as much as it is how you respond to your environment, to different situations. They bring certain things out of us, right? Like different relationships and friendships bring different parts of ourselves to the surface, right? A certain friend might make you really talkative and bubbly. Other friends might make you feel more reserved and you listen more. If you just start to notice how you behave with your spouse, with, your kids, in work environments, with your boss versus with colleagues, one-on-one, group situations, there's so many different layers to life. And I love that the Enneagram can really help you take a look and say, okay, here's who I am when I'm being the person I would love to be, this best expression, and here are my tendencies. And it's really a ladder, like it's level 1 to 10, and you can sort of gauge more easily. So it's not so much like strength weakness as it is situational, contextual, and you can fall back in different levels depending on the situation, right? Also, I really love that the Enneagram isn't just, okay, you're type 4, thanks. There are subtypes. There are arrows that will point to where you might struggle and where you have room for growth. It's a more intricate system than what I found in other personality types. So, I mean, there are lots of different options. Explore as you will, but I really do think getting your Enneagram type will be revelatory. At least it was for me. So let's dive into this episode, which, as I said, type 4. It's the Individualist. Now, this one is kind of the archetype of a tortured artist, really driven by a deep desire for authenticity, self-expression, and significance, to be important from that self-expression. Bit of a drama queen is the tendency on that front. So if you find that you're very dramatic, or people say you're dramatic, this might be you. But at the same time, a type 4 is very introspective and self-aware, and so they're very attuned to their emotions and their inner experiences. And so there's this rich inner world, imagination, and also strong sense of identity. And so because they are so deeply connected with who they are, they often feel different or unique from others. And so it's this I'll never fit in, or no one will ever understand me kind of challenge that the 4 faces often. I do want to point out, right, so remember there are wings. So type 4 can have wing 3 or wing 5. Wing 3 is the achiever, wing 5 is the investigator. And so if you're a type 4 with a wing 5, you could be more fact-driven. If you're a type 4 wing 3, you might be more focused on how you're perceived outwardly. But at the basic level, type 4s are creative and imaginative. They're really drawn to artistic pursuits and self-expression. And when a 4 is blocked or stuck, they're not going to be expressing, so however you choose to express your innermost feelings doesn't have to be drawing, right? It can be singing or writing or spreadsheets, it doesn't matter, but if you find yourself closing off to that, that would be a type 4 sort of in trouble, if you will, or a type 4 that really needs to take a good look internally, because if a type 4 is getting to be externally focused, they might be leaning on that 3 tendency, and then they're really going away from their core self, which is this, that so much wisdom and creativity is within of a type 4, really getting in touch with those innermost feelings is critical, and then expressing them, finding a way to express them is just as important. So type 4 is motivated by a desire for authenticity, individuality. They really want to express their true selves in all aspects of their lives. And so that's where a type 3 and a type 4 can kind of learn from each other, right? Because the type 4 is so internally driven and a type 3 is so externally driven. And so it's funny that they're juxtaposed beside each other in the Enneagram, right? Because type 3 needs to kind of learn, hey, go inward, pay attention to yourself, be authentically you, figure out what that even is. And a type 4 is so in themselves that they need a bit of coaxing out of that sometimes to say, hey, it's not all about you. Look outside. What do other people need? Cultivate some empathy, right? So there's some room to grow there if you're a 4 and have a 3 in your life, or depending on your assessment, if you see what the balance is between your 3 and 4 tendencies. It's interesting, right? Because as a 4, you'd really want to cultivate a bit of that 3. Not the lower levels of 3 where you're lying and putting on airs to please others, but that empathy and ability to adapt to situations, because the 4 can really crumble because they're just so often searching for deeper truth and insights. They're trying to find meaning and significance in their experiences. They're so internal. And so we want to draw that out a little bit, right? But not losing the core essence of a type 4, because that longing to be understood and appreciated, that's what, for me, is the opportunity. A 4 wants to be understood and appreciated for their unique perspectives and contributions. But if you don't put yourself out there, then how can you be understood and appreciated? If you don't share with someone else how you feel and think, then and express yourself, then how can you feel understood? It's kind of this catch-22, right? Nobody gets me. But then if you don't share with anyone, then no one's gonna get you. So that's really a big opportunity for the type 4. The 4 really fears being ordinary or insignificant. They don't want to blend in and lose their sense of identity. And so they've got to really remove themselves a lot to kind of regain that sense of self, and they will. But at the same time, if they have that strong sense of self and if they are secure in themselves, then that fear subsides to a degree, right? Because we're all unique. We all have a unique story. No one can replicate your exact story. And so by definition, no one is exactly like you. And so it's not to say don't be afraid, but it's to say channel that fear into really the self-expression component of a type 4. You're worried you'll blend in? Okay. Create things that'll showcase who you are, that'll also support that feeling of being misunderstood or unappreciated. If you're showing who you are, then you'll be seen and heard by many. Now, of course, there's an underlying fear of rejection and abandonment. So if I show who I am, what will they think? Will they reject me? Will I be accepted? You know what? For that type 4, it's like you might be rejected. Who knows if you'll be rejected or abandoned, but we all have that fear. The 4 really takes that quite seriously and is quite sensitive about it. And what I'll say to that is, fair enough, but you could be rejected and abandoned whether or not you choose to show who you are. And so better to show who you are and then have the acceptance from an authentic standpoint than to kind of fall into that 3 tendency, become a chameleon, but then you don't really have deep connections. You don't really have true acceptance and true connection, and you'll still fear the rejection and abandonment, but you're kind of either as a 4 kind of becoming recluse, or if you lean on 5 or 3, you're going away from your core tendency. So type 4s may struggle with feelings of envy or longing for what they perceive others to have that they lack. And so this is another way that, if you have a friend and you're envious of them and you long for what they have, it's hard to be a good friend to that person, right? And that's something that a 4 really needs to look at and say, hey, okay, can I, if a friend has a business that you envy, well, hey, how can I learn from this person? Would they mentor me, or would someone mentor me or coach me? How can I learn from the people that I envy rather than just sitting in the envy and not doing anything about it, Okay, what else? Well, how does a type 4 navigate the world? Well, as we've said, they're deeply introspective and reflective. So they're exploring their inner thoughts. This is somebody that hopefully is doing some kind of journaling or getting that out of their head and into the world, right? As we've said, self-expression is so important because there's so much to express. There's so much that's being introspected upon and reflected upon that it's got to be expressed. Very much so drawn to beauty and aesthetics. So that's why those artistic mediums, whether writing, music, or visual, are so important, because the beauty of things really does matter to type 4, and they have a keen eye for the unique and unusual. They really appreciate the beauty in life's imperfections and complexities, because they themselves see themselves as imperfect and complex, and maybe even too flawed to be truly known, seen, accepted, heard. And so if you're loving a 4, you've really got to be cognizant of that and know that they're just wanting to be seen for who they are and accepted for that. Where the 4 can grow is that self-acceptance, as we've said. So, hey, embrace those perceived flaws and imperfections and be willing to show them. If you accept them, then you're okay with them, right? You don't have to feel like people will reject you or not get it. You can show it and be okay with that. Gratitude is another one. Really bringing in that beauty, right? Appreciating what is in your life, especially if there are those feelings of envy and lack. One is, again, go toward what you want. Find a way to bring it into your own life. That's one thing with envy and lack, but it is also, hey, what's really great about your situation today? What's going well right now? Last one would be, there are many more. If you do the free assessment and want to get a paid report, you'll get a bunch of growth areas and activities that you can do to continue to grow as a type 4. But last one for now is connection. Type 4s need to prioritize connection and communication with others, seeking to share their inner world and forge meaningful relationships based on understanding and acceptance. So remember, we said this is someone that feels like no one will ever get me. It's kind of that 16, 18-year-old teenager that just no one understands, and they lock themselves in their room. And I'm not trying to trivialize it or belittle it in any way, but it's that kind of archetype of this really wrestling with who they are and how the world sees them. And we want to prioritize connection with people that respect this person's unique beauty, unique traits, their wisdom and keen eye for appreciating life's beauty and seeing things in a very rich way, right? They really feel and introspect deeply. And so this person has a lot to share if you're willing to hear it. And so it takes two parties, of course. It takes that type 4 to come out and say, hey, I'm willing to build connection with you. And then it takes people to really be willing to let that person be themselves. And isn't that what we're all wanting? It's not, I don't think, too much to ask to let someone be themselves and reveal themselves to you. Challenge being, of course, that there could be rejection. There could be, hey, I'm not interested in being your friend based on who you've shown me you are. And that is a real risk when you're authentic. And, heart types, type 2, 3, 4, they struggle with that. They struggle with, if I show you who I am, whether it's the helper, the achiever, or the individualist, if I show you who I am and you run away, well then am I worthless? I'm not. It's a really crushing thing to type 2, 3, 4. So, building the capacity for connection is a very big growth area for type 4. Now, the type 4 is interesting because it falls into the withdrawn triad, the withdrawn type of the Hornevian triad. So really, because they're withdrawn and, as we've said, focused on their own inner experience, we need to be cognizant as a 4 that we're being drawn into our own inner world, and then seek to understand ourselves and find meaning in our experiences in that introspection. But then again, right, notice that you're withdrawing, be conscious of the withdrawal. Don't have that be kind of a knee-jerk response or your gut response, without considering, hey, is there a conversation to be had? Or, hey, once I've withdrawn and composed myself, how can I get back out there, right? Don't let yourself get frozen in the withdrawn state. And finally, as I've already alluded to, type 4 is that heart center of intelligence. So, lots of emotional awareness, can be really great at interpersonal connections as they grow, like we've talked about. And this heart center really influences the type 4's decision making, because they will absolutely prioritize authenticity and emotional depth in their relationships and their creative pursuits. They've got their heart on their string in terms of heart on their sleeve, in terms of allowing their heart to guide them, with projects that they pick up, with people that they're with. It's very much so about how they feel about it as a type 4. And so if you're a type 4, but you notice, yeah, you know what, but I actually think a lot, maybe you lean on that type 5. And so you could be rejecting your type 4 tendencies because you were brought up with parents that maybe said something like, emotions are weak, or if you're a man as a type 4 and expressing that artistic or creative, that very dramatic side was not nurtured and fostered, you could rely on the type 5 and go kind of outside of your core tendencies. And this would be a real room for growth type of area for someone like that. There are a lot of types that masquerade as others because that's how they've been brought up. Maybe their parent is another type, and so they veil their true type because they haven't really checked in and seen it. So, who knows, right? Take the assessment, learn your type. If you get detailed results through a paid report, then you can also see kind of subtypes and more information about yourself, which is useful, like what I've just said. And then, of course, if you want to work with someone like myself, that's absolutely available to you to get some coaching and really dive deep into, okay, how is this affecting me? How is this affecting me in certain areas of my life where maybe I feel stuck, or where I have goals and maybe I'm not really getting there? What's stopping me? It's usually thought processes, and it has to do with, well, how you're thinking about things and what actions you're taking or not taking that need to happen. So I encourage you to reach out for support if this is something you want to delve into, or if there are areas in your life where you do feel stuck or like you're repeating patterns. This type of work can be super supportive and beneficial for you if you're willing to do the work. So, hey, I hope that this was useful. Click the link in the show notes to grab the free assessment and get that filled out. And I will see you in the next episode on type 5, where we'll delve into the investigator. That does have some ties to this one. So if you like this, if you're a type 4, if you know a type 4, I highly recommend you take the assessment and then tune into the next episode to see how those two interrelate. And as always, thank you so much for listening and taking the time to review, and subscribe to the show. Every interaction you have with the show allows this episode and others to really get to people that are interested in this type of content. So it means a lot to me, and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. It really helps the show when you review, subscribe, or donate to support the effort to continue producing amazing episodes just like this one. I look forward to seeing you again in another episode very soon, and take good care until then.